Hello, hi everyone. My name is Ian and welcome to Central Park. If you don't know the Central Park Conservancy, we are the nonprofit that takes care of Central Park year-round. Basically, we keep the park clean and green. Now we know that getting to the park right now is not an option for so many, so we here at the Conservancy wanted to bring the park to you. So you can join us every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. for a series of weekly walks. Today we'll be exploring Strawberry Fields, which is located near West 72nd Street and Central Park West. We'll be together for about 15 minutes or so, and all of the photos were taken by me earlier this week, so they're very new, and it shows the park as it is right now. But before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. Here we go. First of all, feel free to use the chat feature to share any comments or questions you might have. You can also use something called the Q&A feature you'll see on the control bar, and you can ask questions to my colleagues, Ryan and Jose, who are on the back end to answer those. And then I will also be sharing a few polls throughout the walk. Just a few fun questions to engage you, and you can click the answers and I'll share the answers once I have them all. All right, so without further ado, we'll begin the walk. And a lot of you might know about Strawberry Fields, and unfortunately, the origin of this landscape does begin in tragedy. We're here at the Dakota building on 72nd Street. This is where John Lennon lived with his wife Yoko Ono, and tragically, this is also where he was killed in 1980. Later that same year, City Council member Henry Stern passed legislation to rename and dedicate a landscape across the street from the Dakota and call it Strawberry Fields, which is, of course, one of the most popular Beatles songs, itself named after an orphanage near Lennon's native Liverpool. After that legislation was passed in 1980, John Lennon's wife, Yoko Ono, wrote a letter to the New York Times, which you can see here. You probably can't read it all, but you can search it online if you'd like. And basically, she called for the creation of this space, Strawberry Fields, into a garden of peace. And she wrote to leaders from around the world, asking for plants to be sent to the garden. And it was basically to celebrate her husband's life. And at the same time, there was a restoration of Central Park just beginning, really. So the founder of Central Park Conservancy, Elizabeth Barlow Rogers, actually collaborated with Yoko Ono and said, well, you know, getting plants from all over the world doesn't really line up with our restoration plan, but they were able to reconcile their ideas and create this more kind of simplistic garden of peace that also aligned with kind of the traditional Olmsted vision of the landscape. And this was finished in 1985, and this is the landscape that we'll be exploring today. So here we are, here's the map. If you don't know where West 72nd Street is, it's kind of like the southwestern corner of the park here. I've outlined where we're gonna walk in this blue rectangle, and I'll zoom in to where that's outlined to get a better look at where we're walking today. Where the picture we just saw, we're at West 72nd Street, and this route I created is a little confusing, so apologies, but basically we're gonna walk in and immediately we're going to loop around here and walk to the northern section of Strawberry Fields. You can see Strawberry Fields is this teardrop shaped area here. It's comprised of this upper meadow here. This top part is this kind of like plateau that's very hilly, and we'll walk down the slope to the smaller but just as nice lower meadow here, and we'll end at the Imagine Mosaic, which you may have heard of. So when we enter the gate, we're coming through Women's Gate here. There was a report in the 1860s that remarked that less than 3% of park visitors came through this gate, and then a report in the 1980s claimed that upwards of like 35% of visitors came through this gate, which really speaks to how much the city's population has changed, because the Upper West Side, of course, became a very populated neighborhood. And when you walk in the park right here, you will see this really beautiful wisteria covered kind of like pergola here, and you'll see the wisteria are these vine-like plants that cover this. I don't know, it really transports you into the park right away. And actually, I'm going to do my first poll here while I'm thinking of it. Now, Strawberry Fields probably is one of the most visited areas in Central Park, so I would imagine many of you have visited here. I also included the option, yes, I have visited, but only the mosaic. I did not know there was an entire garden. I say that because the mosaic is awesome, but there is this like 2.5 acre garden, which is really nice to explore. The results are coming in, and I see most people have, but yeah, maybe assume many of you have not seen the entire landscape. As we loop down, we're gonna see Riftstone Arch here, which is an arch that many of you have walked over probably. It's on West 72nd Street, but very few pedestrians see because it's hidden so well. It's covered by these plants. And this was built in 1862 by Calvert Vaux. We'll walk underneath the arch here and we end up on the other side of it. We're walking up the bridle path, which is designed for horseback riders to take through the park. And just to show you, so we walked up the bridle path and now we are at the top of that teardrop. We are at Strawberry Fields now. And the northern end here is this beautiful wooded slope. It's covered with mostly native plants, as you can see here, which I think gives it a really wild feel. And you'll notice these outcrops of Manhattan mica schist that I think underscores that feeling. We take a closer look, we can see some beautiful flowers blossoming right here. And I wish I could include sound, but you would hear all these bees buzzing around. There was a lot of life in this garden for sure. And these flowers right here are called cup plants. They're a flowering plant in the aster family. Now, this is sort of a hidden path on the northern end. I'm sure we have many regulars to the park here, but you may not have explored this area, so this would be a cool place to come. You'll have to kind of climb past this tree that's blocking us here. And as I walked by, you could see a squirrel that really didn't pay me much mind feasting on an apple core there. So there's fewer people in the park right now, I've noticed, at least on the weekdays, but the animals are still thriving for sure. And you can walk up this path, so just be careful. And we will get to the top here. We get this beautiful view of the lake on top of this ridge, and you can see bikers flying by on the drive. And I felt like this would be a good time to reflect on another character. We'll talk more about John Lennon and Yoko Ono later, but I wanted to talk about someone who also contributed greatly to Central Park, who might be less well known, and that is the late landscape architect Bruce Kelly. Bruce Kelly was part of the Central Park task force that predates the Central Park Conservancy, and he would go on to start his own landscape architecture firm. And I think he's probably best remembered because he did lead the restoration of Strawberry Fields after Yoko Ono collaborated with the Conservancy. They hired Bruce Kelly as the landscape architect, but he contributed to many other landscapes in Central Park, including a few playgrounds. I saw someone in the chat say they were just at the Shakespeare Garden. Well, Bruce Kelly did the restoration of the Shakespeare Garden and the Point, which is part of the Ramble. He also helped co-author the restoration plan that was created in the 1980s, which has hugely influenced how the park has improved over the last few decades. So I don't think we can understate his contribution, and unfortunately passed away at a young age in the 1990s. But going back to the park, we can explore this garden that he's had a huge hand in here. I love seeing the parallel between nature and these buildings here. These are two dawn redwoods, these trees, and in the background you'll see the building, the San Remo, which is a beautiful building on Central Park West, and we can see the two towers sort of imitating nature here. This is a closer look at the bark. It's kind of hard to take a picture of a tree, and I really appreciate it, but believe me, these are beautiful, and you can see it's got a pretty distinct bark pattern here. This is the upper meadow, just taking a step back and looking at the whole thing. It is a simple garden apiece. I think that's what the designers were going for. Something simple, but you can see it's very functional. And there were so many people just kind of enjoying a quiet slice of nature when I was here the other day. You can also walk down this beautifully wood chipped path. And in August right now, it is very lush. And in this photograph, we're seeing what I think are mostly plants native to North America. And yet there's still sort of an exotic flair to them, I think, such as this oak leaf hydrangea, which is on the side of the path here. It's named such because the leaves resemble that of an oak tree, and it's also got these beautiful flowers here. So there's a bit of color in the landscape now as well. Further down the slope, we're heading towards the lower meadow. I saw this branch on the ground, and I included it because we had a lot of questions in the last few weeks about the impact of the windstorm on Central Park. And I still haven't seen any data, so I don't know the actual numbers of trees lost. I hope it's not too many, but I have a feeling it is because I've anecdotally seen a lot of trees fallen. And this is, I don't know, I think it was like 10 days ago at least, and there's still some branches around despite the diligent work of the Conservancy to clean it up. So just to orient you on my confusing route that I chose, we walk south through this first bigger meadow. We're going to get to this smaller meadow at the bottom. And here we are at that smaller meadow. You can see some more architecture in the background. That is the Majestic, really great example of Art Deco architecture. And you can see this pigeon majestically flying in front of me. I happen to capture on my camera, so I thought that was cool. And I'll include my second poll now. It's kind of a shorter poll, but okay, I can't seem to get the, oh, here we go. Sorry, I'm always bad with the polls. Okay, I can't, oh, here we go. Apologies, I'm like always have technical difficulties with the polls, but I finally figured it out. And I was just asking which building you prefer. And we see the Majestic in the background here, which is Art Deco 20th century, and the Dakota, which I'm not really sure what it's characterized, but we saw it earlier, which is a really beautiful building. I wish I could have included more buildings on this. We only partially saw the San Remo in the background, but as you can tell from my walks, I mostly like just admiring the trees and plants we see around the park, but I think I would be remiss not to mention these awesome buildings that you can also see from the park. And it seems like the strong favorite is the Dakota, and it is a really beautiful building. Small tangent here, but it is it was designed by the same architect who created the Plaza Hotel. That is Henry Hardenberg. Well, anyway, we'll go back to nature though. Well, no more buildings for the rest of the tour, I promise. And I just wanted to highlight in the lower meadow, there are some beautiful trees we can check out as well. And what's nice about this area is that most of them have plaques on them. So here we can see this is an Eastern red cedar. And then this one you might be able to guess what it is based on the leaves and the fruit that it has. Pretty distinct tree. This is the ginkgo tree, and most people sort of loathe the fruit on this tree because it smells bad when it falls, but they look like bunches of grapes right now, which I thought was cool. And you'll see on this photo that I included on the label of the tree, it says 72nd Street Crosstown Tree Walk. So we have a couple of self-guided tours that you can check out on our website. Ryan or Jose, you can share the link now. But it's kind of nice because parts of the park have these tree labels, so you can do one of those self-guided tours, and then you can learn to identify some tree species using the labels. I don't have a fun fact with this picture, but I had to include it because I thought it just showed how beautiful this meadow is, and you can see how many plants there are from the ground cover here up to these tall canopies in the background. And then I saw this bush, or what I thought was a bush, and I was like, what is this? I've never seen this before. I thought it was like a giant hedge or something. And up close, I saw these clusters of flowers that are like yellowish green flowers. It was so beautiful. But upon further investigation, unfortunately, I discovered it is a down tree. So there is quite a bit of damage, it seems like, in the park right now, unfortunately, from that storm And this was a smooth sumac tree. So unfortunately, it looks like it will be taken out. This elm lost a branch as well, but thankfully the tree itself is still standing. And I highlighted a lot of many different plants on this walk. Most of them were green, but there is still some color in the garden as well. Like these roses add some nice flair to the space. So I hope I made the case for this being a beautiful garden for you to come visit. But you know, I have to also talk about the Imagine Mosaic and the memorial to John Lennon, which is probably the most visited aspect of this area. This area here you see is usually extremely crowded, but right now, as many places in New York are, it's a bit less crowded, but we have a lot of New Yorkers in this photo still enjoying the space as a place to relax. We have 2 more New Yorkers here on the bench. And before we finish on the mosaic, I wanted to show you on this rock, you can see this plaque here, which was added at the dedication of Strawberry Fields on October 9th, 1985. That would have been the 45th anniversary of John Lennon's birth. And like I said, the original idea was for all these countries to send plants to the garden. I think there was some pushback on, you know, having all these plants from all over the world coming in just for custom's sake and making sure we don't have invasive species. But what was cool is that all these countries signed on to endorse the garden as a garden of peace. And I think it really just shows the international recognition of John Lennon. And here's a photo of a different ceremony. This was the groundbreaking in 1984 when the restoration began. You can see Yoko Ono in the photo, John Lennon's son, Sean Lennon, and also pictured our former mayor, Ed Koch, and Henry Stern, who was the city council member who introduced the legislation and later became the parks commissioner. And Yoko Ono, I wanted to highlight, she gave a really generous gift of $1 million for this restoration of the landscape. $600,000 went to the project itself, and then $400,000 was set aside to create a landscape or a landscape gardener to take care of the space, which was really cool because you had someone dedicated to taking care of this garden and making it or maintaining its beauty. And that went on to really influence the model that the Central Park Conservancy uses to this day to manage the park by splitting it into different zones in which gardeners take care of the space. And oh, I accidentally zoomed by there, but this is the final slide, and I wanted to end on the most iconic part of Strawberry Fields, and that is this Imagine Mosaic, which was gifted by the city of Naples. It was created by Italian craftsmen using black and white marble. So it's simple, but I feel like that adds an elegance to it. And all the parties involved, Yoko Ono and I think everyone in the Parks Department and the Conservancy felt like they didn't want a big bronze statue necessarily, but this memorial, I almost feel like the simplicity of it adds to the weight. And, it's got the simple Imagine lyric for, one of his most famous songs. And what's cool about this memorial, because it gets millions of visitors a year, is I think that means something different to everybody, which also makes it a powerful place to visit. And for me personally, I work in the park. The park is a big part of my life in that regard. I always just think about how amazing it is that we've had so many different generations of people dedicate a lot of time and energy to create this public green space, which was at one point an unthinkable idea. And thanks to the hard work of so many people, we have this amazing space. And I think that is really spectacular, and I'm very grateful for that. So I hope you enjoyed this walk. It was a short stroll once again, but maybe you learned something new, or maybe you'll be encouraged to visit for the first time or visit for the 100th time. And I hope you enjoy it. So thank you so much for visiting. I really appreciate you all coming. If you'd like to stay engaged, there are a number of ways you can do that. You can visit our website at centralparknyc.org/mycentralpark. And you can use the hashtag MyCentralPark to learn more about how the park has served as a respite in times of crisis. You can read stories from other New Yorkers, and if you'd like to share your own stories, you can do that as well. You can also download some coloring pages, word scrambles, or a Zoom background like the one I am using right now. So I want to thank you again for coming. I'm going to leave the room open for a few minutes. If you have any more questions, my colleagues can answer those. And next week, same time, same place, I will be leading a tour, walk through the Pinetum. So I hope you can join us again. Until then, from the Central Park Conservancy, stay safe and be well.